Warriors podcast. I'm Max.
I'm Rich.
And on this podcast, we are going to talk about the Weird Warriors comic, the Weird War Tales comic book series published by DC Comics from 1971 to 1983. On this episode in particular, we are taking a look at Weird War Tales number 55. But first, Rich has some retroactive history for you.
This is for the newer listeners to the show that might not have listened to our whole episode catalog and don't get what I say when I go, Nazi armbands in the field as a killjoy. I'll explain it as such. Let's say you're a sniper overlooking a German camp at the front. You see Wehrmacht soldiers milling around all over the place. No targets calling out to you. Then you see some stuffed shirt SS bigwig with the swastika armband parading around. Who are you going to shoot? That's why we don't salute officers in the field. You don't want to point out the brass to snipers. General text, too. The guy wearing the red armband has a tendency to draw fire. This was a lesson the Germans picked up pretty fast, and they stopped wearing them at the front to enhance their survivability. Intel report. Another two-part story arc in another title that I'm serving up for listener awareness. Swamp Thing 82 and 83. Published by DC Comics in January and February of 1989. Script by Rick Veitch, who also does the pencils in issue 82. Pencils in issue 83 by Tom Mandrake. Inks in both by Alfredo Alcala. Swamp Thing struggles to find purchase in the green or the spirit world, and finding them beyond his grasp, he has nowhere to turn except the time stream. Settling, his fractured mind takes root inside the recently deceased body of a young soldier named Alexander Holland. Taking control of Holland's body functions, the Swamp Thing brings him back to life. And who should stumble upon the newly revived Holland but Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, who nicknames him Lazarus. But when Swamp Thing dies again, he is thrown back into the time stream, where he soon reanimates the body of a French World War I flyer, where enemy ace Hans von Hammer rescues him from the wreckage. It's only a matter of time before Anton Arcane also gets involved. Vote for the second annual fan-voted Intel Report. Do it now. Winner announced next episode. Cover detail. Art by Joe Kubert. 35 cents. The mystery and madness of Weird War Tales is red and yellow. A terrified blonde GI has his back against an ice wall. He's dropped his rifle and is raising his arms to protect himself from a towering ape-like figure closing in on him. There's a dead GI behind it in the snow. On the creature's back are 6 U.S. steel pots and a tattered uniform. A sign pinned to the uniform reads, "This man is an American. His safe return will be rewarded $1,000. Under the title in blue lettering reads, "The Abominable Weapon." And on the lower right corner is a banner that reads, "You could be in the Superman movie. Details inside." Cover date, September 1977. Date of release, June 7th, 1977. Killjoy, we'll reserve that for the cover story inside. Go on to the CNC. Great Kubert cover. The blonde GI looks a bit like Ice Cream Soldier, appropriately, I suppose. His peril is perfectly framed between the beast's arm and torso. So much for that safe return. Why'd you drop your rifle, dude? Now you're gonna die. Kubert draws him wearing overshoes, which is a nice bit of detail I've long since come to expect from the master. We're off and running.
Yeah, for my CNC here, I will say, as you said, this is indeed a great example of a Kubert cover. I know I've had some soft spots with the Kubert covers in recent episodes, but this is what we're talking about here. Not only are the composition and choice of colors simply perfect, and I'll go on about colors in this issue, but for right now, I'll just say I like how the snowman is in purple and in shadow, even though the collection of trophies on his back is brightly lit and so forth. It works and makes everything pop. It might not be perfectly realistic, but I love it. And the storytelling is all there in the picture too. You've got the aforementioned trophies on the snowman's back. You've got his previous victim in the foreground. and the terrified GI being surprised in the present moment. Which brings me to a theory brought up by one of Rich's comments. The GI's rifle looks more set down on purpose than dropped. I think what we're seeing here is a soldier who just finished relieving himself on the floor of the cave, only to turn around and find out that the current resident is not too pleased with him having done so. They say, don't eat the yellow snow, folks, but maybe you shouldn't even be making any either. If you want to live. The only knock I could even think of giving this cover is that I don't think the note about the reward tagged to the Yeti's back on one of those uniforms was necessary. It's more distracting than intriguing. And yeah, I follow this up in the title story, so don't worry, Rich. But hey, even though I think that note, while it may be accurate, is distracting, this overall is a fantastic cover. We are off to one heck of a start here. We've got an intro page, and I believe Rich is going to give us the down low on that.
We don't know who wrote the script, but art is by Romeo Tanghal. We went over this a bit last time. Death wears the uniform of a World War II U.S. Master Sergeant, holding a futuristic ray gun in his bony hands. He stands in a museum of weaponry where everything from Stone Age axes, maces, and crossbows to machine guns, tanks, and missiles are on display in glass cases, hanging from the wall, or suspended from the ceiling. Death says,
since time began, war has steadily grown more deadly. Every generation getting new weapons to play with, new toys with which to take life. Will this be the generation that discovers the ultimate weapon that will turn war into total chaos? Only I know, for I am death, and you are only pawns in my weird war. Join me now and watch what happens to those who attract my interest.
There's no killjoy on that. I'll kick off the comments and commendations, riding on my high of pretending to be Death himself here. And I'll say there are some things that I will always smile at when I see them in a comic book. Cutaway diagrams of secret headquarters is a big one. And of course, a somewhat more focused feature like this one, a close-up of a trophy room. Heck, the Batcave is both of those things. I would have liked Tanghal to sneak in a DC superhero weapon or two into one of the displays here, but hey, there's only so much space in a one-page intro spot. And you know, that crimson arrow quiver in the background could have belonged to Green Arrow's sidekick Speedy, right? So the super fun vibe I got off the cover just keeps rolling in this issue so far.
Sci-fi blasters aside, this scene reminds me of the West Point Museum, which has multiple levels of various weaponry. This is a great page. African shields and spears, horned Viking helmet, Killjoy? Stone doorway arch. Looks like the bayonet Death has on him is one of those old World War I 16 inches. Most of them were cut down to 8 inches for World War II. If Tanghal can keep his work up at this level, I will be a happy Joe. Moving on to the cover story. The Abominable Weapon. 7 pages, script by Arnold Drake, art by Bill Drought. Japanese Colonel Mitsub Sawaka leads a column of troops into the Himalayas, searching for the crew of a downed U.S. plane. The point man discovers tracks in the snow of a large, unknown creature. It might be a Yeti. Sawaka doesn't care about the local wild tales of abominable snowmen. The U.S. plane carries a new radio navigation system, radar, and they must capture the crew before they can destroy it. Too late. An explosion billows up from behind a distant ridge. 2 American pilots run off through the snow away from the burning wreck, hoping to find shelter in the nearest town, and that the citizens there are friendly. Each man wears a blood chit on the back of his jacket, identifying him as a U.S. flyer and promising a reward of $1,000 for a safe return. Meanwhile, the Japanese troops are finding more evidence of a Yeti. It's too big to be a bear, but Sawaka still doesn't care. He may have lost the radio gear, but capturing the knowledge of it in the Americans' heads will still bring him glory. Suddenly, a Yeti steps out from behind a boulder directly in front of the stunned Japanese, who prepare to kill it with their rifles. But Sawaka immediately sees an opportunity. Don't shoot! Capture it! Who kills that thing will die at my own hands! The Japanese soldiers swarm the Yeti and bring it down with weight of numbers. A hunter like this will track down the Yankees for them. Lashing their captive to a sled, they drag it to the closest town to occupy it. The colonel's aide, Captain Matako, calls out to the villagers, "In the name of the Emperor Movement of Asian Co-Prosperity, we are here to protect your peaceful village against American air pirates. The colonel will see your mayor at once." Later, the two men speak in the mayor's commandeered home. "And these 3 volunteers, what are they for, kind colonel?" the mayor asks. "To assist us driving the big noses out of Asia. The Western time is over. The sun rises in the east. Forever." "Then they are to be soldiers like yourselves?" "Soldiers? Yes, of course, soldiers like ourselves." The village prison becomes the Yeti's home, and the special training program begins at once. Dressed in the uniform of a captured American flyer, Sawaka savagely whips the trapped snowman, who howls in pain. "See, Yeti? Me bad. Me American. Wear American clothing. American hurt Yeti." The process was repeated over the next several days. Then the 3 volunteers are brought to Sawaka. "You are all free to go. The American clothing is all we have for you. Here's some money for your efforts." The locals gratefully accept the money and uniforms and leave. 2 hours later, Sawaka releases the enraged Yeti. "Hunt down the Americans! Kill the Yanks!" The Yeti's keen animal senses lead him right to his prey. The locals don't stand a chance and are swiftly killed. Sawaka is pleased when the Yeti returns with the tattered remains of the American uniforms. Captain Matako breathlessly runs in and reports that the Americans are nearby, and Sawaka instructs him to release the Yeti to find them. If the Yeti tries to kill the Americans, his troops have orders to kill the beast. The flyers must be taken alive. As he watches them walk off through a window to find the Americans, he is shocked to hear English spoken behind him. The Americans are aiming sidearms at him, and they don't look happy. "Is that your beast out there? You trained him to kill GIs, didn't you? We stumbled on one of his victims, a Nepalese in a GI uniform, and figured the rest out." What you do with me?" the colonel stammers in English. When the Americans begins to take off his flight jacket and crush cap, "You're a smart man, Colonel. Surely you could figure the rest out." Sawaka is aghast and shies away from the offered items. "No, I not put it on." "You've got no choice, Colonel. Hop to it, or else." So tired, the colonel is shoved out of the hut and into the night. No, stop, let me be, don't send me out there." The Yeti quickly finds Sawaka and does what he was trained to do. Killjoy History Minutes. The sign on the back of the jacket on both the cover and here is often called a blood shit, and it obviously wouldn't be in English. Blood shits, or more properly identification flags or escape patches, in World War II are most famously associated with the China-Burma-India Theater of Operations, and especially Claire Chennault's Flying Tigers, the first American volunteer group in China. In the most general terms, a blood shit is a written promise of a reward to local civilian populations for the safe return of a stranded service member. The World War II blood shit derived directly from the Guli chit carried in World War I by British Royal Flying Corps aviators in India and the Middle East. The word chit came into English by way of the British occupation of India and a Hindi word meaning a small document or note indicating a debt to be paid. In 1937, when Claire Chennault arrived in China as an advisor to the Chinese Air Force, foreign pilots flying in China were already being issued rescue patches by the nationalist Chinese government. They were printed in silk, about the size of a handbill, with a prominent nationalist Chinese flag in the upper half and Chinese text in the lower half. The text was a message to the effect, "This foreign person has come to China to help in the war effort. Soldiers and civilians, one and all, should rescue, protect, and provide him with medical care." The text was printed in black while the area was overstamped in red with the seal of an agency of the nationalist Chinese government. Many of the Flying Tigers famously applied their bloodsheds onto the backs of their flying jackets, but sewing them into the inside of their jackets was probably more common, especially during the war. The silk fabric, if sewn inside the jacket on just 3 sides, made a good mat pocket. Additionally, not prominently displaying the nationalist Chinese flag on one's back often worked out better if the flyers came down in areas controlled by the Chinese communists. To this day, Chinese communists are still touchy about the nationalist Chinese flag. There were lots of variants with the US flag and the CBI patch. My uncle got me one from China years ago. Check the album. 2. Japan never invaded Tibet during the war. Sawaka even says they were in the country illegally, and their forwardmost lines in Burma weren't close enough for a covert issue like this to be plausible. 3. The Japanese here called the Americans air pirates. The North Vietnamese often called the American POWs that. So this could be a topical, though historically incorrect here, obviously, reference to that. But hey, calling Westerners big noses goes to show that racism isn't a one-way street. 4. The China-Burma-India theater was the forgotten front and the end of the longest supply line of the war, well over 10,000 miles by ship, plane, and truck to the fighting fronts. Ships coming from the west coast of the US had to make huge detours away from the Japanese-occupied islands. Chinese ports had been occupied by the Japanese, and once the Japanese invaded Burma and cut the Burma Road, the only land route to the Chinese forces from India, all supplies had to be flown in over the Himalayas, aka the hump, the rooftop of the world. Eventually, the Burma Road would be reopened, and a detour route, the Lido Road, would be established. Countless aircraft vanished into the forbidding terrain from bad weather, mechanical failures, combat, etc. Originally, the plan was to use B-29s to bomb the Japanese home islands from China, but the logistical nightmare of literally having to fly in every drop of fuel, bombs, parts, food, tools, personnel, etc., not to mention having to use thousands of coolies to hand build airfields long enough to support the huge 4-engine bombers, quickly proved to not be practical. The effort shifted to capturing the Marianas Islands, which proved a lot closer and easier to supply. 5. The Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, page 4, panel 1, was a Japanese concept of a unified and self-sufficient bloc in the Asia-Pacific region under Japanese control. It was to be Japan's ideological new order, which would amount to a self-contained empire stretching from Manchuria to the Dutch East Indies, and including China, French Indochina, Thailand, and British Malaya as satellite states. Under the slogan Asia for Asians, Japan intended to ensure its political and industrial dominance over the region while excluding it from both European imperialism and communist influence. In reality, surprise, surprise, most countries within the co-prosperity sphere were exploited by Japan for its war effort. It collapsed with Japan's effort to the Allied powers in September of 1945. Comments and commendations, because I hope you're not done listening to me talk yet. Another abominable snowman story. The 70s. I really liked this story at first, but as time went on, the plot holes started popping up. If the 3 villagers are from that village, why did they have to leave it for the Yeti to track them down? I've also never seen Yeti spelled Y-E-T-T-I. Where did the soldiers following the Yeti go once they left to find the Americans? They could have saved the colonel's life. The moment the Americans turned the tables on the sinister Japanese officer, all the stereotypes come out. What you do with me? Why you take off jacket? I not put on. Page 7, panel 3. He even seems to have a bit of the buck-tooth with glasses trope going on. But hey, we haven't rung the old comics man bell in a while. I give Trout full marks for his U.S. uniforms on page 7, panels 2 and 3. The CBI patch, as referenced in GI Sweethearts 45, on the blouse and crush cap are perfectly rendered. Pilots took out the wire stiffener in the caps and wore headsets over them during missions. Over time, their caps' edges would get crushed by the headsets. It was a good indicator for how long someone had been in theater. I love his representations of death on the first and last pages of the story, too. The exchange between the servile mayor, hat in hand, and the conniving colonel on page 4, panels 3 and 4 is another. You already know those 3 volunteers are screwed. Page 5, panel 3, the shadows behind the prison bars as the colonel goes to work, with the Yeti's cries and the cracking whip. This is another guy that can't die soon enough. But to give Drake his due, I love the wording on panel 1 about how Colonel Sawaka is the strangler of the hump pipeline. Good story, despite the plot holes.
Oh, what? Huh? Who's there? What? What am I
Wake
doing?
up!
Oh,
Wake
oh
up!
yeah.
Action!
All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Weird
Weird
War
Warriors
Tales
podcast.
number 55 or something. Woo! Okay, so my CNC for this first opening story after a super fun cover and intro page starts off with a little estimation of my buddy Bill Drought. And I'll say that Drought's art and page design give this story that ineffable Gold Key Comics vibe that I love so much. So, as you guys may know, that goes a long way with me right there. Combine that with, as mentioned, a very attractive host logo panel that sets up the story nicely, accompanied by understated but cool looking crooked merging lettering used for the logo itself. And at the start of this story, my good mood has remained unchanged. Did this mood survive to the end of the tale? Well, let's see. On page 2, panel 2, I see that the reward note, as Rich explained for us, on the backs of the Flyers jackets is apparently a thing. This is before I just heard the History Minute and all that. But I still think it was more of a distraction than an asset on the cover. But whatever. Page 3, panel 3 gives us an unflinching look at the brutal capture and beating of the poor Yeti who was just minding his own Yeti business. So my thirst for fictional vengeance is nicely activated right there. The propaganda propagated by the Colonel in panel 1 of page 4 was perfectly portrayed too. Now, I got to make a note here. I was listening during the History Minute. I always listen. And I thought that thing about the what was it called here? The Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. I thought that was like some sarcastic bunch of euphemism he was making up. I didn't realize that was a real thing. So I was just like, oh, he's using some disingenuous term to get one over on the mayor. But that was cool to learn that that was an official piece of disingenuous propaganda. So the silhouette and sound effects work on page 5, panel 3 is very well done, but keeping things in the dark does nothing to spare you from my wrath there, Colonel. So you got like the silhouette and sound effects work on what I'm talking about is like it's the further whipping of the Yeti when he's in training and everything. That's a very cool panel, but still going to get you in the end there, Colonel. Trust me. I also really like the portrayal of the enraged Yeti's face in the final panel of that same page. It looks very much like a Don Heck kind of creature design. And in fact, Drought's work gives me some low-key Heck vibes throughout this story. The choices of panel shots, the excellent rendering of the clothing, and so on. It's not overt, but it just adds more fuel to the Bill Drought is a newly emerging favorite artist of mine fire. I absolutely love the coloring in panel 4 of page 7. Simple but evocative stuff. And of course, the 1-2 punch of the excellently rendered final 2 panels of the story. Just really do it for me. I don't think the plot holes were that big at all. For me, when I was reading it, I didn't experience them to be that big. You send the villagers out to stimulate the Yeti's chase instinct to get his blood up, etc. That just seemed like how you train a guard dog to me. I just sat back and enjoyed the ride of this story all the way through, which is definitely a testament to, spoiler alert, my good mood wasn't dented at all by the first story. So let's see if it continues. We've only got one more story in this issue, people. And as you may have guessed, you're going to have to listen to me read the synopsis for you. So that second story is called A Rebel Shall Rise from the Grave. It's 9 pages long. Script is by stalwart George Cashdan, and art is by Alex Nino, people. Synopsis for this second and final tale goes like this. 1921, the mountain village of San Pedro, Mexico. Ill-equipped and hungry peasants use muskets, pitchforks, and kitchen knives to repulse the modern Mexican army. On a bluff overlooking the battle, General Gomez doesn't understand what it is that drives the filthy locals. "A legend and a prophecy," replies his aide, Colonel Morado. He offers the general his telescope and points out a mounted statue in the town square of one Alejandro Rivera. Rivera had ridden with Zapata and had died there, leading his people to victory. In the last moment of his life, Rivera vowed, if he was ever needed, he would return to lead his people once again. That is why they hold out against such hopeless odds. They await Rivera's return from the dead. Gomez bursts out laughing. "What a marvelous idea you have given me. You, my trusted aide, are going to be a hero tonight." Soon, in the command tent, a transformation takes place. A peasant's uniform, some candle wax around the nose and eyes. I have to slip in a weird science joke there. Candle wax on the nipples. Who knows if I'll edit that out? A fake beard, and behold, Colonel Morado becomes the legendary Alejandro Rivera. The plan is beautifully simple. Rivera will return from the grave and lead the villagers into an ambush. The Mexican troops laugh as Morado mounts up and departs. "Make sure you find some cover when we start shooting at the cucarachas." As predicted, the villagers are awestruck at the return of their hero Rivera, and every man, woman, and child that can carry a weapon is summoned. Waving his saber, the ersatz Rivera leads his people out of the village to fight for triumph over tyranny. Nearby, Gomez prepares his ambush on a narrow ledge overlooking a canyon pass. Every inch of ground is covered by a rifle or machine gun. It will be a massacre. But minutes turn into hours. With no sign of the villagers, Gomez begins to worry that the peasants had seen through Morado's disguise. But suddenly, Rivera and the villagers materialize on the high ground behind the Mexicans and attack. "Charge, my people!" Rivera cries, leading the way. "Swiftly! Do not give them a chance to regroup." The peasants slam into Gomez's forces. Trapped on the ledge overlooking the cliff, the Mexicans have nowhere to retreat, and dozens of them fall to their deaths. The ambush had been reversed. Now the Mexicans were being massacred. Gomez sees his Rivera and seethes. "Morado! It was he who betrayed me. If I do not live to kill another man, I will see this one die." Drawing his saber, he slashes across Morado's midsection. The blow causes him to tumble off his horse, and Gomez pounces on him, violently hacking away with his blade. "Why did you do it, Morado? You, my best officer, my trusted aide. What did they offer you in return for this treachery?" Gomez laughs as he walks away from the body. "You cannot reply, Morado? I must wait till we meet in another world to hear your answer. You have brought me defeat and disgrace, made a mockery of my army, but I brought you the ultimate defeat." Oh, incredibly though, Morado wasn't dead yet. Gomez never sees him slowly sit up and cradle a Gatling gun in his lap. The general dies still laughing as Morado mows him down before Rivera himself collapses. At last, the battle ends, and the villagers gather around the general, wondering who this Morado was. They soon get that answer as Colonel Morado, still dressed as Rivera, stumbles onto the battlefield and identifies himself. "I was on my way to your village when I was knocked unconscious by an unseen person." One of the villagers points to where he'd seen Rivera's corpse and replies, "That unseen person, fool, lies right over there. He is gone." Back at the village, the peasants get another shock. The mounted statue of Rivera now cradles a Gatling gun. How was it possible? Perhaps one should ask how it was not possible. For was it not his appearance at the moment
of his death. The end.
Hi, folks. It's time for me to talk again. History minutes. Step right up for your history minutes. The Mexican Revolution was an extended sequence of armed regional conflicts in Mexico from November 20th, 1910 to December 1st, 1920. So we can get creative here and incorporate this story into it with a touch of artistic license. It's been called the defining event of modern Mexican history and resulted in the destruction of the Federal Army, its replacement by a Revolutionary Army, and the transformation of Mexican culture and government. The Northern Constitutionalist faction prevailed on the battlefield and drafted the present-day Constitution of Mexico, which aimed to create a strong central government. Revolutionary generals held power from 1920 to 1940. The revolutionary conflict was primarily a civil war, but foreign powers, having important economic and strategic interests in Mexico, figured in the outcome of Mexico's power struggles. The U.S. involvement was particularly high. Big shock. The conflict led to the deaths of around 1 million people, mostly non-combatants. 2, speaking of U.S. involvement, the Pancho Villa expedition, now officially known in the U.S. as the Mexican expedition, but originally referred to as the Punitive Expedition, was a military operation conducted by the United States Army against the paramilitary forces of Mexican Revolutionary Francisco Pancho Villa from March 14, 1916 to February 7, 1917, during the Mexican Revolution. The expedition was under the command of General John Blackjack Pershing, who would later command all U.S. forces in Europe in World War I. It was launched in retaliation for Villa's attack on the town of Columbus, New Mexico, the most remembered event of the Mexican Border War. 18 Americans were killed in the attack on the town and the neighboring U.S. Army Camp Furlong, with casualties fairly evenly split between civilians and soldiers. But they gave a lot better than they got, killing 70 Mexicans in return and capturing and executing 6 more after a trial. But the declared objective of the expedition by the Wilson administration was the capture of Villa. Despite locating and defeating the main body of Villa's command who were responsible for the Columbus raid, U.S. forces were unable to achieve Wilson's stated main objection of preventing Villa's escape. The active search for Villa ended after a month in the field when troops sent by Venustiano Carranza, the head of the constitutionalist faction of the revolution and then head of the Mexican government, resisted the U.S. incursion. When war was averted diplomatically, the expedition remained in Mexico until February 1917 to encourage Carranza's government to pursue Villa and prevent further raids across the border. 3, I can't find a reference to Alejandro Rivera, but Emiliano Zapata did exist. He was a leading figure in the Mexican Revolution from 1910 to 1920, the main leader of the People's Revolution in the Mexican state of Morelos, and the inspiration of the agrarian movement called Zapatismo. Cooperating with a number of other peasant leaders, he formed the Liberation Army of the South, of which he soon became the undisputed leader. Zapata's forces contributed to the fall of dictator Porfirio Diaz, defeating the Federal Army in the Battle of Cuautla in May of 1911, but when the revolutionary leader Francisco Madero became president, he disavowed the role of the Zapatistas, there you go, denouncing them as mere bandits. In November 1911, Zapata promulgated the Plan de Ayala, which called for substantial land reforms, redistributing land to the peasants. Madero sent the Federal Army to root out the Zapatistas of Morelos. Madero's generals employed a scorched earth policy, burning villages and forcibly removing their inhabitants, and drafting many men into the army or sending them to forced labor camps in southern Mexico. Such actions strengthened Zapata's standing among the peasants, surprise, surprise, and succeeded in driving the forces of Madero, led by Victoriano Huerta, out of Morelos. In a coup against Madero in February of 1913, Huerta took power in Mexico, but a coalition of constitutionalist forces in northern Mexico, among them Francisco Pancho Villa, ousted him in July 1914 with the support of Zapata's troops. Zapata did not recognize the authority that Carranza had asserted as leader of the revolutionary movement, continuing his adherence to the Plan de Ayala. In the aftermath of the revolutionaries' victory over Huerta, they attempted to sort out power relations in the Convention of Aguascalientes, October to November 1914. Zapata and Villa broke with Carranza, and Mexico descended into civil war among the winners. Dismayed with the alliance with Villa, Zapata has focused his energies on rebuilding society in Morelos, which he now controlled, instituting the land reforms of the Plan de Ayala. As Carranza consolidated his power and defeated Villa in 1915, Zapata initiated guerrilla warfare against the Carrancistas. You can tell I don't speak Spanish, do you, folks? Who in turn invaded Morelos, employing once again scorched earth tactics to oust the Zapatista rebels. Zapata retook Morelos in 1917 and held most of the state against Carranza's troops until he was killed in an ambush in April 1919 at the age of 39. After his death, Zapatista generals aligned against Carranza and helped drive Carranza from power. In 1920, the Zapatistas obtained important positions in the government of Morelos after Carranza's fall, instituting many of the land reforms envisioned by Zapata. Zapata remains an iconic figure in Mexico. Comments and commendations. You're getting history lesson this time, folks. There's something about Nino's art that really lends itself to this story. This might be some of my favorite yet by him. The craft on display throughout hits a bullseye, like page 2, panel 6 of the camp scene. Soldiers milling around, checking weapons, sitting around a fire, making coffee, ropes, tent stakes. It's a vision as old as war. Page 3, panels 2 and 3 form a single L-shaped panel. In fact, the map mostly bridges the gap between the two of them. Page 4, panel 2 has Morado next to a Rivera's statue in identical poses, waving their sabers overhead. Then the action scenes, page 5, panel 1 of the peasants leaving the village, and all of page 6. The savagery of the combat, the falling Mexican soldiers, and the last panel of the story is totally badass. 45-degree angled view of Rivera's statue cradling a machine gun instead of waving a saber. Cashtan shouldn't be ignored either. I love the disdain on page 3 that Gomez has for the peasants, calling them cockroaches. Quickly gives you a uh-oh, someone is overconfident vibe. Great ending story.
I gotta say, I really do. I love it when we have a lot of History Minute stuff. Not just because I get to mostly kick my feet up for most of the episode here, which as anyone who knows me would know, I look forward to doing with any excuse I can get. But like I've told you guys again and again, I don't read these beforehand. I listen to them right when we record. And man, it's just like when I used to take a car ride anywhere with Rich that lasted over 5 minutes long back in my college days. You get a lesson. You get a history lesson whether you want one or not, you know. But just fantastic stuff. And also, again, reanimated statues notwithstanding, cooler stuff happens in actual history than happens in even the pages of this so-called horror supernatural comic book. So again, I'm in for the ride with these History Minutes, just like all of you guys. So this is fun for me too, is what I'm saying. So speaking of that kind of fun, I'll get to my CNC here for this excellent final story. In the paraphrased words of that guy who owns the trademark to saying that thing, are you ready to Nino? Art-wise, every panel and page of this thing is a masterpiece. As Rich indicated, it's perhaps the showcase piece for Nino's residency in this title. Since Nino's line drawing and page design are so often praised on this very program, and the understated but creepy host logo panel is beyond reproach, I'm going to focus my commendations on something else that you all know I really like, and I alluded to when I talked about the cover. It's the super creative coloring on display here. Again, it is great throughout, but the first big example of this stuff comes in on panel 3 of page 4. The light purple mountain's majesty resting beneath the fiery crack of blazingly magenta colored sky is just striking, setting a mood with the coloring rather than just being boringly slavish to realism. Imagine a modern recoloring of this tale with a regular night sky just farted all over that corner of the panel. Boo. The modern recoloring, they tend to just replace all of this creativity with, but what if it looked more photorealistic though? Okay, so everything's brown. Good job, you know? Page five's opening panel, using coloring as the panel borders. And again, it all becomes part of the mood that the story is trying to convey. On page six, the sky, as the page six, which Rich mentioned, the whole thing is amazing, but I'm gonna, borrow that page, but talk about the coloring here. The sky goes from red to orange, and the throngs of soldiers that merge into a barely distinct mass of yellow silhouettes in the background. This is comics, people. Do you know how to make them? Alex Nino does. On page seven, the magenta sky returns before turning from reddish to orange once more, and ending the page with a flash of color, marking the point of the Colonel's final blow. It's like a Jim Aparo-like burst, but somehow more violent looking. None of this would have the same impact in black and white, or, as I mentioned, with more realistic coloring. The chimerically chromatic cloud covering continues on the following and final pages, of course, to great effect, with the peacefully pink and white strips of color in the sky above the crimson caryatid countenance of Rivera at the very end. Oh, and the story was great too. This was a triumph. So, with the story content being over and done with, and greatly enjoyed by both of us, we are going to move on to the APO Weird War Tales letters page, to which Rich is going to read you the intro.
Drum roll, please. We finished tabulating the results and are pleased to announce the winner of the Weird War Tales poll contest. The lucky fellow is Tom Morrow of Rock Island, Illinois, and to him we extended our hearty congratulations and a free one-year subscription to WWT. Tom's name was picked at random from all the entries whose orders of preference for the stories in WWT 53 matched the results of the poll. Deadly Dominoes by Jack C. Harris, Juan Ortiz, and Tex Blaisdell took first place with 37.5% of the vote. The Day After Doomsday by Paul Kummerberg, Jeff Eklund, and Bob Wiechek came in second with 33.25%. And last place with 29.25% of the vote was Something to Die For by Jack Olick, Ernie Chua, and Wayne Howard. All in all, a close race, especially with 40% of the voters guessing correctly. Once again, congratulations to our winner. And now, on to the letters.
Yeah, Tom Morrow won the free year-long sub to Weird War Tales. Sure he did. Tom Morrow, we love you. Tom Morrow, you're not real. There is no way. On the other hand, Larry Lasowski, as I'm about to read a letter from here, writes in to enter the contest and pretty much just insults the issue he's writing in about, so maybe the competition on the ground was pretty thin. Larry's letter kicks off like this. Dear Joe, I never could resist a contest, and since it's been a while since I've written to any comic mags, I thought I might as well get into the routine again with a chance to win something. First, The Day After Doomsday. I've always liked these features, both here and when they appeared in House of Secrets. It's this type of feature I think that should be cover featured on Weird War Tales. There are only so many scenes of dead soldiers and skeletons one can take before things become monotonous. I'm not calling for a total changeover to weird science fiction, but it makes sense to me that you could broaden your appeal by pulling from both military and science fiction fandom. Second, Deadly Dominoes. A bit on the unbelievable side, even for comics, but it was nevertheless a refreshing change of pace. For once, we have a truly weird story which does not directly involve the intervention of supernatural forces. Third, Something to Die For is far too stock in approach. The evil man shows he is a heartless animal after personal gain, and he finally gets it on the last page, where some ironic sidelight revealed.
Ugh. Despite this, it wasn't all that bad, with the twist being a little more original, but not original enough to raise it from last place. Larry Lasowski, not going to win any kind of contest. 115 Southbury Lane, Levittown, New York, 11756.
My missive is from Roger Clorice from 9415 Northwest 72nd Street, Tamarack, Florida 33321. Dear Joe, since I assume Jim Aparo was only funning us on the cover of Weird War Tales number 53, I'll withhold my condolences, but I don't exactly think congratulations are in order either. Jack C. Harris's Deadly Dominoes was scripted quite competently, but I couldn't follow it too well. Admission of stupidity, number 1. I suppose, though, that was its point, its circularity. And speaking of more clearly, I suspect I've seen the power of Juan Ortiz's pencils more clearly with another inker. Tex Blaisdell has a tendency to obscure the detail in a good set of pencils. Jack Oleg's tale, Something to Die For, did. It's not just that Jack's been writing the same story, with the same tired twist endings for years, it's just that he's done it so much better before. And Wayne Howard's inks took any power that might have been in Ernie Chua's pencil's way, replacing it with an inappropriate slickness. Little wonder then that my liking for this series combines with both quality and victory by default to push The Day After Doomsday to the top. Those vignettes have always been a high point of this book, as well as the House of Secrets when they ran there years ago. Perhaps this is due to the variety that Steve Skeets and Paul Kupperberg have brought to what is essentially the same situation, and in a mere 2 pages at that. Jeff Eklund's name, though new to me, is what I hope to see again in the future. I think he was a one and done, sorry pal. And the name I most hope to see again in The Day After Doomsday. By the way, how about another book lengther? Joe responds with, 1 book lengther coming up, Roger. An upcoming issue of Weird War Tales features a Weird War science fiction fantasy tale by Steve Englehart, and other full-length stories are currently in the planning stages. Ta-da!
All right, there we go. Letters page is out of the way, and Rich is going to entertain you all with his choices for his spotlighted ads for this issue.
Spotlighted ads. Taking a page from Max's book here. Usually when I cheat, I select 2 ads. This time I'm picking 6. But there's a heavy asterisk on that. Besides, there are those tiny ones on the direct advertisement pages. Page 8, dead center. Increase height. Details, 35 cents. Tall up, 10039. Box 426, Dayton, Ohio, 45401. Build muscles. Details, 35 cents. Muscles, 10039. Box 426, Dayton, Ohio, 45401. Eliminate debts. Details, 35 cents. Debts, 10039. Box 426, Dayton, Ohio, 45401. Build big arms. Details, 35 cents. Arms, 10039. Box 426, Dayton, Ohio, 45401. Build huge chest. Details, 35 cents. Chest, 10039. Box 426, Dayton, Ohio, 45401. Which of these things doesn't belong? Get taller. Get stronger. Improve your credit score. I probably would have blown right by these if not for the debt call out. And then page 30, top center, we have the Magna Power Ring. Operates up to 1 inch away through objects. Control devices with an invisible magnetic field with your Magna Power Ring and Magna Actuator. The Magna Power Ring and Actuator can control TVs, lights, alarms, anything you connect the Magna Actuator to. Includes Magna Ring, Magna Actuator. Instructions: send 125 plus 25 cents for postage and handling to Superpowers Enterprises, P.O. Box 49507, Chicago, Illinois 60649. It has a drawn hand with a glowing green power ring on it, a la Green Lantern, appropriate for a DC book. This is another ad where you can predict the palpable disappointment the kid that orders this is going to experience. I looked online for more info on these and found nothing other than the scans on Etsy of the ad itself.
Yeah, that one just had to be an absolute crusher. You got it like, Holy moly. But yeah, man.
1 inch away.
Yeah, up to 1 inch away. Like, but what, oh, dude, I had a theory about those 6 ads from your first choice, actually. Like, the debt thing is not out of place because once you turn yourself into a hulking vascular giant of pure sinew and muscle, who's going to tell you that you still owe them money, huh? Right? The goal there is to get so big and massive that everyone just forgets that you might owe them $5. So it's all linked together, I think. But,
Or by eliminating debt, you get hired on by the mob to go collect the payment down at Joey's delicatessen or something like that.
yeah, either way, I think those are all an ad for the same service, really. Either way you take it. So I picked a couple of ads, as I always do. And as I have been lately, they're both kind of DC house ads. So, like I said, I always cheat, but I'm keeping it down to 2 ads this time around, not like 7. First up, there's this awesome
6.
Well, 6. Okay, fine. Yeah, whatever. Who's counting? I am, and I'm adding 1. First up, we got this awesome full-page house ad for the Englehart Rogers Mr. Miracle series, featuring a perhaps slightly thinner than usual and even more scantily clad than her usual battle bikini wearing Big Barda. This thing is just cool. You've got Mr. Miracle on his arrow discs bursting from the background to the foreground with his cape stretched out. The art actually looking a little bit like early Walt Simonson, even though, it is Marshall Rogers here. So you've got that costume really excellently rendered, which is very difficult for a lot of people to get right. And you've got a poster for his escape act on this brick wall in the background. And Oberon, his agent slash manager who managed the previous Mr. Miracle. If people know their history, this costume and name is something that's scot-free of New Genesis slash Apocalypse adopted from a retiring circus performer. And then you got the aforementioned Big Barda with her hair in the metal red kind of, I don't even know what to call these things, but it's kind of bound up in these little red ceramic looking strips like Kirby would often have her done up in. And then again, like I said, I referenced her battle bikini version of her Kirby outfit, but this one has even less of a bottom piece than usual. I just see like some kind of magically floating frontispiece holding a gossamer skirt barely aloft in front of her on this ad. It says, on sale June 23rd by Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers. This thing lasted about 25 issues, I'm thinking, and I picked up a good amount of them through garage sales back in the day. That's how I read them. So it didn't sell very well, and it ended up in a lot of people's front lawns in a box. And I picked up everyone they would put out there. It's a great series. I'm not sure if it's on DC's app or not. I should really check. So, and you guys can check. It's a good one to check out, even though it lasted about, like I said, 24, 25 issues. Following that ad, right? There's a little bit of solicitation text for one of Weird War Tales' sister mystery titles, House of Mystery number 254, featuring a few familiar faces in the creative credits in this issue's installment of Direct Currents, the DC Comics House news insert that I've often been tapping into lately. So check this out. Again, it's House of Mystery number 254. Solicitation text says, another dollar's worth of fright, including The Night Job by Michael Fleischer, Russell Carley, and Jess Jodleman. Good for Nothing by Jack Olek, Steve Ditko, and Wayne Howard. Yes. Dead Man's Bride by Olek and Alex Nino. Curse of the Sea Monkey by Lois Maywald. I'm not familiar with that person's name at all, and my printing's a little sketchy. And E.R. Cruz. Skin Game by Olek and Abe Ocampo. Trial by Fire by Chester Hazel, Ernie Chan, and Bill Drought. And The Devil's Plague by Arnold Drake and Marshall Rogers, who I was just raving about. Not only that, but we've got ads for Men of War #2 with Gravedigger in it, Sergeant Rock 308 on this very same page. And I'll get into the Sergeant Rock solicitation too, because that just includes something very cool at the end. So it says, Rock and the Men of Easy take one short step in a tale by Bob Coninger, Lee Elias, and Romeo Tangal. Plus, a new USS Stevens story by Sam Glanzman. So how can I not make this one of my spotlighted ads, right? Like, it's just, I had to. So I've got Mr. Miracle, which is one of my favorite things, Kirby's Fourth World, and the people that tried to carry it on after him. And then those incredible solicitation ads that just, how could you get more star-studded in a Weird War Tales sense than all that stuff I just read to you? You couldn't, I don't think. So, with all that out of the way, we've got the ads done, we've got the story done. We're going to move on to a little section of the show we like to call, Got Any Last Words? And I do. I will say that this was a simply superb issue of Weird War Tales all around. Alex Nino's work here is obviously the winner, but Drought is not at all to be sneezed at for his work in the opener either. I for one enjoyed the writing in both stories equally. Who wins? We do, troops.
Two stories of overconfident officers being undone by it. I totally thought Abominable Weapon was going to be my fave, but A Rebel Shall Rise from the Grave snuck by on the inside rail for the win. Excellent book all the way around.
Agreed. Hey, Rich, what's the scuttlebutt?
Scuttlebutt? It's been noted before that Max created a monster when he approached me about wanting to do a podcast, which is all the funnier since I never even listened to one at that time. In these days of once-a-month episodes, I shall endeavor to keep you amused in the interim on our old FB page. For those not aware, I have created 2 new albums over there. One, Introducing Death, Your Host, is a collection of all the intro pages in the series. Like the Intel Report album, it only gets added to as we go along episode to episode. The other one is more fun. Killjoy's Crazy Combat Covers. All Ks. I was originally going to call it Crazy Combat Covers, but 3 Ks all in a row is a bad look if you know what I mean. I have a friend whose initials are KKK, and I'm like, that is definitely something your parents did not think through when you were born. Like that homeroom teacher I had in high school, Harold Weiner. Your parents named you Harry Weiner? Were you an unwanted pregnancy or something? But I digress. Quadruple K is where I drop covers to war comics that Killjoy has a few things to ridicule. I'm not going to generally only point out miscolored or misplaced national insignias unless it's breathtakingly egregious, or the aforementioned Nazi armbands in the field. All war comics are in play, not just DC. Probably no Weird War since I do those in real time for the show, but that could change. It's a fun album. There's also albums of every Weird War Tales cover, including the redeployment issues, the House of Glanzman, which shows neat things at Sam and Sue's home, an episode guide that walks you through what episode was released when, Road Warriors, special missions, etc. The Super Team Family album are mock comic covers where DC War comic stars team up with heroes from other universes. The greatest team-ups that never happened, but should have. Are you not entertained? If you're not exploring the FB page every now and then, it ain't my fault if you're bored.
Yeah, people. The Facebook page has only grown since I handed it over to Rich, and like he just mentioned, since we're kind of ratcheting things down to once a month, to keep me from quitting, essentially. Rich is taking that energy that he has, that to my surprise and somewhat horror discovered that he now has for the show, and is directing that onto the Facebook page for all of you. So if you like the show, you had better be going over there to party on with the Facebook page, because it pretty much never stops over there, right? And it's all due to your friend and mine, whether he likes to admit it or not, Mr. Rich. All right, so go to the Facebook page, have an awesome time. And hey, I'm not there that often, so it's even more of a good time. Okay. You can also, speaking of keeping the good times rolling, people, you can go over to redbubble.com and you can search for the Weird Warriors podcast over there and get our amazing logo that was drawn and designed by Bill Walco of the Hero Business online comic book. You can get that logo put on any piece of merchandise you can find over there. And if you do so and send us a picture, Rich will send you a Sam Star. We've still got some of them left. All right. And they're amazing. And, there's only like 3 of them out there in the wild. So get cracking. All right. Plus, hosting fees for this show are not free. So when I say keep the good times rolling, I'm being kind of literal there. All right. You give us money, you buy that stuff, and it goes directly into the coffers to keep those hosting fees paid. Okay. So with all that being said, we'll hand things back over to the more giving of our hosting duo here. And Rich will give you even more. He's going to give you a teaser for the next episode.
It's been said that we're the best there is at what we do, but what we do isn't very nice. I'm kidding. No one ever said that. Well, maybe the second part. I've been wanting to do this issue for over a year, with everyone eagerly lining up in anticipation of Deadpool and Wolverine. The time has come. A Marvel Mutant Mayhem special mission. Wolverine 32 from the 2003 series by Mark Millar. A ghost story in the tradition of creepy and eerie. This standalone issue is set in a World War II concentration camp and stars a feral character who looks like Wolverine, acts like Wolverine, but who is he really? The head Nazi running the camp is going to find out, or he'll die trying.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this one. Not only have I kind of like peeked at the issue already, but you drop creepy and eerie in there, and you've already got me all revved up. 2 of my favorite magazines ever. So I'm excited, people. You should be excited. It's gonna be awesome. And just to remind you how awesome it's gonna be, it's gonna be awesome because we're gonna be there. And who are we? We're the Weird Warriors, people. We're the Battling Bros. This is the Weird Warriors podcast, where we always promise to make war
No more.
One of these days, I'm just going to leave that part in there for the hell of it.